Delhi Master Plan, proposed Delhi Master Plan 2041 or Mumbai Master Development Plan 2034 and so on. So my presentation today includes learnings from these exercises that I have done. I think that given that we are now set on, and as we heard in the morning, about the very fast trajectory of urbanization that we are going to experience, whether it's statutory or non-statutory, but these are all settlement-based planning that we would want to do. So I have certain suggestions for ITPI and other planning schools to consider. What I want to speak of purpose of education itself, starting with there. I come from a university which is more or less, Ahmedabad University is a new private university. We are in the 4th year of our new program, which is based on choice-based system, which is basically what the new education policy is talking about. And we have now in the 4th year of implementing, so to say, the new education policy. And so it's also my experience coming from that side that I would like to bring in. The second, but I'm going to speak on a bit, I'm going to show you the graphics on planning perspectives. And it also gets represented in what we heard today morning. I'm sorry, I was not there yesterday. I had a class yesterday. There's certain critique of planning education we can skip, but I would like to emphasize on recommendation. When we had done research on human development report where I was dealing with education sector, I was one of the co-author of Gujarat Human Development Report, and where we see the purpose of education is threefold, which is instrumental, which is a scholar called T.A. Schulz had said in 1968 that more you study, more your income increases. And it's an instrumental view, which is directly now a very relevant concept on when we move towards more market-based education, because now in professional schools and private schools, the first question that students ask, what is the market? Where is the child going to get absorbed? And are we going to teach market skills to be able to get absorbed after? There is another view of education which is intrinsic, that I want to study because I want to read literature, I want to do whatever I'm interested in doing. I would study, but then I will go and fish the rest of the time and so on. Do I have a flexibility to do that? So education is not tied to what, so to say, what do you say, earning your bread or earning your chapati. And the third is education for social transformation. And I see planning education in the third category of education for social transformation. And why do I say so? The second thing is that in planning education and planning schools, we need to now think about, and it's a little bit, if we were to think about planning education as transformational, do we follow what market dictates us, or do we tell market what needs to be done? And I think that's a key question that we need to resolve ourselves. And I found that a lot of debates that I read through in the Indian context, we still find the discussion on planning education a bit of a more instrumental view, because market is asking students to do finance, and market is asking students to do project finance and so on. We are doing that. But and so at the end of the planning education, we continue with the old programs, and then on top of it, keep adding new programs, and it becomes a hodgepodge basket of courses and curriculums that one has found. Or do we as a planning schools and planning educators guide what planning profession should be? And I think we have come from earlier utopian sort of system. Professor Mishra is here, he's nodding, is what we have learned when we were studying at that point in time. I want to bring forth various perspectives on planning, and I'm not going to give a lecture, but there's a graphics that I would like to share with you. And there are, and this is what we heard today morning. We talked about definition of urban, we talked about governance, we talked about climate change, we talked about poverty, we talked about inequality, we talked about everything that is there. We talked about services. Engineers say that what planning means is networks. We talked about sustainable cities, water, recycling, etc., and some photographs that Professor Pandey showed. We want cities to be resilient, so planning has to be resilient. There are now large number of studies, and there's a sort of campaign in Delhi which is going to deal with urban planning, called She Rises. That how would cities look from women's perspective? What would women want in cities? We also want beautiful projects. Riverfronts was mentioned in the morning. Cities are sites of protest, Jantar Mantar and so on, and we see multiple protests which are in a democratic country, they're part of it. All countries have seen that. The market view of cities and enterprise. And currently what we read in the master plans, and I've read large number of them in last 1.5 years, and it's only talking about FSI and TDRs and etc., as if there's nothing beyond that in planning. These are all market tools which we have imported from American experience of planning, not the European experience of planning. And so this is what is an urban cafe. Everybody wants to do have multiple expectations of what cities must be doing. Then, as we look at our planning programs, are our planning programs able to cater to all of those? I doubt. Even if it were to be 5-year integrated undergrad master's program, we would not be able to cover everything that's there on this slide and maybe much more. Earthquakes are going to come in, the climate change, half of Mumbai is going to be in water by 2050 if the large Antarctica iceberg is going to break, which is already breaking, and so on. And so my proposition is that we need to think, and planning schools need to take a call on what they want to do, even if it were to be a 5-year program. I also think that we have come a long way in our understanding of planning, and this is what I was learning the master planning when, I don't want to tell how many years back, but many years back, to what we now talk about as planning. This is the town planning scheme, which is now being promoted all over India as a land pooling mechanism for planning, across planning, all the plans. So we find that as mechanism, and if you're going to do plot level town planning scheme, we're going to lose kind of an perspective of the whole city. The projects that we see in dealing with climate change are all project-based, small efforts. We don't know whether it's going to, does that matter? If we are collecting waste in a colony, does that matter for waste management at the city level? And so what we need to be sort of navigating is from a whole perspective, which is the master planner perspective versus bottom-up, small plot level perspective on planning. And we need to sort of reconcile of how we are going to deal with that. And somebody can do one, but the other schools can do the other, and not necessarily everybody has to do everything. We know, and I think we heard that in the morning, that planning has come up front in the global agendas very much today. In the Sustainable Development Goals, the new urban agenda, the planning is talked about some 50, 60 times. The term planning appears in all these agendas. And all of us know about it. Let me just keep what I think is today the idea of what we practice as planning is really very, very limited. We have missed, there are a few courses on ethics, informality, but if you really want to make a healthy cake, you can't just put some topping on the top and say that, look, it's a healthy cake. The whole ingredient of that cake has to change if it has to be healthy. And so if you want to be dealing with sustainable cities, it cannot be the same planning courses and contents that we are dealing with. We need to change drastically the contents of the pudding that we are cooking. You can't just keep using the same, use a lot of butter and then make a pudding and then say, look, it's not healthy, so we'll do something on the top to make it healthy. That doesn't work. We need to rethink about contents of planning. Often planning is top down, as we saw, very much driven by experts and so on. I think I don't have any problem with the experts because that gives big, thick rotis and thick buttered rotis, I think, a lot of money. But we also need to think about other planners that are required in our society. I have a big problem with the term master because it's also a very gendered term. It's not gender sensitive term. It's somebody who is in control, whereas feminism talks about being collaborative, cooperative in terms of working. Whereas master is a term, is not really a very cooperative term. It tells somebody is in charge and leading things. And we need to also change about how we think a planner should be. Planner should be a leader, but not necessarily the master. It could be, and so there are different ideas about what planning should be. And lastly, as I said, we heard about poverty, inclusiveness, inequality, informality, etc. in our earlier session itself. How to deal with it, I don't think we really have any idea. We can't deal with informality and inequity with the tools of planning that we are practicing today. So what I have much broader recommendation is last part of my presentation, that we need to broaden the scope of planning and definition of planning as a professional. We cannot have this one size fit all kind of infrastructure or what planning is. We could think of planners in schools taking a position of different kind of planner. That is, one could be a spatial planner. Finally, the space is required because that's legally sort of controlled, but not necessarily everybody has to be in that space. I know when the Rajiv Awas Yojana was being implemented, even JNNURM was implemented, many cities, and we were doing a case study in Rajkot, they had hired advocacy planners, social advocacy planners, or social mobilizer or animators by the municipal corporation to implement this program. So they need to do community mobilization. We could have a community planner train. It requires a very different set of skills than the skills that we get in the planning school, skills of negotiations, skills of communications, etc., which is very little there if you look at the planning curriculums today. Advocacy planner, one could advocate for one kind of development model or so. There could be local economic development planner, there could be gender planner, planning for cities for women, and so on. There could be a large list of planners. There could be a planner dealing with only climate change, dealing with all other multiple aspects that I've talked about. This is just a representative example of what it is. Planning also as a paradigm need to be shifting from top down to bottom up. Lot of research and practice coming out of the countries of the global north, south are talking about bottom up planning, inverse planning. African planning schools have coined the term called inverse planning, that you start from the bottom, not from the top. The Latin American planning has seen a lot more protests. They're calling it subversive planning term. We have now in India certain experiences that Delhi, there was a big campaign called Main Bhi Delhi, which civil society organization, academics, community-based organizations came together to discuss about Delhi Master Plan, proposed Delhi Master Plan 2041. They had consultations at the NIUA, and after which, and I think DDA was quite open about it, and then COVID sort of closed down everything that was going on, but they had done quite a bit of mobilization and told people what is a master plan, because people don't know what is a master plan. And you require different kinds of skills. And if all this has to be done, we need to have a flexibility in planning education. Planning schools should be able to decide which one of the area that they need to focus on. Because, I mean, there's a famous system, some saying in some Hindi film which said, "Jindagi mein kuch to chut hi jata hai." And so you can't be needing and giving everything at all the time. And one needs to, because the time is short, we need to take a call on what we want to teach. And everybody, all of us take a call on what we want to do about our lives. And same thing should be available in planning education, and new education policy allows that flexibility of deciding what focus should be. There are certain courses which could be introduced as core courses, that is critical learning courses. That could be, and which we don't know how to negotiate that, is that there could be live projects. Some of the American schools have live projects, which is experiential learning. You deal with a project follow-up in terms of its implementation over time to see what are the issues involved. There are ethical issues in this. And finally, if we are going to change and radically change our planning education, we need to have more flexibility and accreditation mechanism and curriculums setting. So thank you.